Set your boundaries, stand your ground. These 6 words are those of Rachel Moran. Rachel, in my opinion, and many others, is the best. She's an international speaker on issues of prostitution and exploitation. She's a women's rights advocate and campaigner and best-selling author of Paid For: My Journey Through Prostitution, Surviving a Life of Prostitution and Drug Addiction, and On Dublin Streets. The best explanation, and we're going to have all this information about Rachel in the body of the video, but the best explanation, it should be mandatory reading for everybody on why prostitution should not be legalized. Rachel Moran is the Director of International Policy and Advocacy at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. Let's learn. Rachel, you got to bear with me because you have such wonderful credits. I want to share them with everybody. I want people to know a little bit more about you. You're instrumental in bringing the abolitionist Nordic model. We call it the equality model here in the United States. You were instrumental in bringing that to Ireland in 2 separate processes on either side of the Irish border, and you work centrally within the international survivors movement. So important. We must listen to survivors, support survivors, which calls for the implementation of the abolitionist model worldwide. Rachel has spoken at the United Nations, the European Parliament, Westminster Parliament, and many other global institutions and prominent places of learning. We urge everyone to please follow Rachel. 2 different things on X, Twitter, everybody, at Rachel R. Moran, and also the link for her book. Again, mandatory reading will be in the body of this video, Paid For. We want everybody to read that. It is raw. Buckle up, everybody. Let me throw out a warning. We might hit on subjects that you may not like, but it's the reality today in today's world, all these things going on. Rachel Moran, welcome back to the Warriors.
Thank you so much for having me back, Lynn.
Oh, I'm excited to see you again. I think I spoke to you, don't hold me to this, about a year ago. So it is definitely time for an update. And I want to start with Rachel. I'm in the middle of New York City, and I used to go to the UN quite a bit. I would be invited to different things about human rights, prostitution, sex trafficking, labor trafficking. And one day, this is me, I'm like, I don't want to go there anymore. It was almost like I'm going for kind of a photo op. Like, what things are just getting worse and worse and worse over the last couple of years. So I stopped going. And then recently I saw and watched, the special rapporteur Reem Alsalem's, her presentation, her report on violence, against women and girls. And I said, oh, this is a shocking reversal. I think I have to get in there. I have to talk about this. I've got to get to know this woman. And I've got to get Rachel back on the Warriors to talk about all this. So you've been at the forefront, Rachel, of this for quite some time now. Please explain. It's a loaded question. Explain the report and your thoughts about
Well,
it.
I want to say, Lynn, that I absolutely relate to what you've just said there, because I too got exhausted with the UN, particularly with the gathering space that the UN Commission on the Status of Women had become every March for years and years. And I went for like most years for the first half of the last decade, from I think 2012 to about 2017 or 18. It was a year or two before COVID when I felt I had just had enough of this, because I'd gone about 6 or 7 times running. And just like yourself, it had got to the point where I was exhausted, saying the same things constantly. And I felt too that, such an amount of time had gone by. And what I was starting to notice was that you really were preaching to the choir, because it was the same faces sitting in different chairs. That was the only thing that was changing, is where people were sitting, And I'm used to speaking to crowds. I've been speaking to crowds for so long now that, there's a lot that you can gauge from a crowd just by looking back at them as they're looking at you, and you can sense what's going on for them emotionally, And I had begun to feel that this was a well-intentioned, epic waste of time. So that's why I could really relate to what you said there when you were talking about the shift in direction then when Reem Alsalem's report came out. I think it's enormously important, and you can always gauge how important a piece of work is, no matter where it comes from, by the reaction that it draws from our political opponents, who have been wailing like banshees since the day the report came out. So, I mean, that to me is all the evidence you need.
So I have to ask you, do you think, Rachel, because there's been such resistance, look, all the work you have done, you've lived, I mean, your life experiences and the pushback has been so hard. We've got the proof about prostitution is violence, if you want to break it down to make it that simple. Do you think with this report, the pendulum, because I feel so good about it. I feel so good that we have a woman who did this work, put it out there at the UN. Do you think the pendulum now will begin to really swing back? Things will open up. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, the funny thing about when we talk about pendulum swings, Lynn, it depends very much what arena you're talking about. It's certainly a pendulum swing moment from within the UN, that's for sure, because they have been decades ignoring us. They have been decades printing and publishing nonsense. The whole academy, I'm waiting for the pendulum swing to come out of there. That's going to be another big one, because it's so deeply embedded and entrenched in there, this ideology. I can't think of a university in the world that is producing consistent, important, and truthful research on the issue of the sex trade. I'm not aware of one. But I'm kind of getting a little off topic. Your question was about whether this is a pendulum moment in and of itself. I would say from within the UN, certainly it is. It's immediately begun to produce responses in the mainstream press and elsewhere from both sides. There's a really important Past Blue article. I can send you the link for that if you haven't seen it yet when we get off the call. And that was from a human rights figure, Jessica Neuwirth, who's based in New York. And she had been breaking down the different elements of the report. And that's something maybe that your viewers might want to take a read of as well, because I thought that was a really well-argued, important piece of writing. And I just feel the more the merrier. It's like when something like this happens, it gives people the courage to say things that they had been thinking or at least suspecting but hadn't yet found the guts to say. So I think it's important on a lot of different levels. And yeah, certainly it is a pendulum swing moment.
Rachel, why do you think, let's go back to like academia and education and all that. Why won't, and as we know, there's a lot of money put into different universities and things like that, research. Why wouldn't one of them? Because if you don't know of a report, I don't know of any. And if you don't know of one, there are none. Okay. So why wouldn't anybody put out a report about this? What's your feeling about that?
Well, Lynn, it's not that the reports aren't there. It's what I'm talking about is the consistency. Like you'll have the odd report now and again coming out of this university or that university now and again. We've had a couple of reports coming out of UCD here in Dublin, for example. But what I'm saying that you will not see from within the academy is a university consistently
Yes.
producing the truthful reports over and over again. You won't see, well, I say you won't see that. You won't see that if you look around now. I do hope you'll see it into the future. But what we have seen for decades upon decades now is the absolute reverse. Universities solidly committed to producing not just nonsense, but nefarious nonsense, harmful, damaging um, pieces of so-called research. They're supposed to be grounded in facts, and in reality, they're as far from facts as they could be. It's all about the money. It's also about not only the grants and where the grants are coming from and the ideology underpinning the grants. There's all of that arena, of course.
Mhm.
But when it comes down to the individual academics themselves, and this is what I find so totally unforgivable, and that's a word I very rarely use, by the way, Lynn, because I think it's a very ugly word, and there's very little in this world that's unforgivable. But I would really struggle to forgive the men and women of the academy who put their careers and their tenure and their career advancement and climbing up the ladder front and center consistently ahead of the absolute carnage that's really going on, concealing it, hiding it, airbrushing it out of reality. That's what they're doing with their reports. It would be wonderful if they were magical reports and they could actually airbrush them out of reality in the lives of the women who are living this, then I would be all for it. But it's the concealing nature of what they do and the contemptible reasons why they do it. That's what makes it unforgivable for me.
I mean, when I hear you say that, Rachel, that's to me is so criminal. I'm calling it criminal, criminal. Yet we're seeing so much of this, in the United States and across the globe as well. Um, you touched on something. I ask this question every day, Rachel. I kid you not. All of this noise, reports, no reports, headlines, whatever. What is really trickling down to, that victim, that survivor, helping turn all of this, the sex trade around? Where are the resources? Where's the housing? Where's the medical, psychological? I'm always asking this, and I'm just always told, well, we just don't have resources. I am so tired of hearing, because I still maintain, despite everybody struggling in the world for the most part, there's still a lot of money out there. If people really wanted to find it and use it for good. Give us your perspective. Give us some stats about the sex trade, prostitution across the globe. I mean,
Mhm.
tell us. I know a lot about the United States. I don't pretend to know. I mean, I read, I look at reports and things. It is mind staggering when I read things across the globe, what is going on, how it escalates, and why it's allowed.
Mhm. Well, you've just opened up the door to give me a lovely opportunity there to do a bit of moaning, Lynn, that I rarely get to do in public. Although I do plenty of it in private, is that, what this reminds me of, the question that you've just asked, is the massive disparity in funding between what the sex trade survivors movement and the so-called sex workers movement. And it's a David and Goliath struggle. I mean, you couldn't imagine. It's like for every dollar we have, they've got like at least 100 grand, at least, Um, and that to me is very painful because, as you say, there's plenty of money in this world. I founded Space International back in the spring of 2012. It was the autumn of 2015, 3.5 years later, before we got 1 cent. Um, and we were modestly funded. Not that I'm ungrateful for our funding, by the way, don't get me wrong, I'm grateful for every cent of it. But I see the huge disparity between what the women I fight alongside are granted in order to try to turn this thing around, and what the opposition are granted in order to try to not only keep the show on the road, but escalate it out of all control, which is what full decriminalisation does. I believe that was the basis of our last discussion, by the way, wasn't it? We were talking about the elements, all elements of full decriminalisation. I believe that if there was at least fair play, if it was at least, the same amount of funding and for the same amount of platformed voices on both sides of the fence, I believe that we would have got a lot further than we are today. But we're still making progress, even with that very much minimized amount of support. We're still making progress because the thing is, Lynn, you can't put a dollar amount on the truth. You can't buy it, you can't sell it. It's outside the laws of capitalism. So when you bring the truth to the table in these conversations, it has a power all of its own. And you really only need to be able to have the money to get the women there into that space, wherever it is, in front of a journalist, in front of a politician, in front of an auditorium full of students who are willing to listen. and that's the kind of support that women who've come out the other side of the sex trade and are working as campaigners really need. It's the support for access, to make ourselves heard.
Wow. I have to go back to Rachel. Yes, we see this disparity. We see this very well-funded, sex worker world, at least here in the United States. The push is tremendous. You know, uh, I can go as far as every state has the same website, but a different name. It's like very well funded, all these different websites and things like that. They will go to our state capital. They have luxury buses, boxed meals, and then we're going up on a bus ticket on our own with a water bottle type of thing. Is that because there's so much money behind this pro sex worker, sex work, their words, not mine, because there's so much money is the bottom line. So obviously they don't care about human beings at all. Is it just because it's a money-making machine?
There's a few different ways to answer that question, and I'll put it to you like this. I know a lovely woman. You must ask her on your show sometime, by the way. Her name is Meis, and she's a South African. She worked for a long time for Sweat, which is the South African wing of this international sex workers' rights movement. And she took the job working for them, as she told me afterwards. We're very good friends now. We've known each other for quite some years. She took the job because it was the only alternative to what she was doing out on the streets of Cape Town. So this is the very limited choices that these women have. And so she stayed with them for some number of years. I can't remember how many. It might have been like 3 or 4 years. And eventually her conscience just couldn't stand it anymore. Just couldn't stand it. And she left. And she came over to our side of the fence and she started campaigning as an abolitionist survivor activist. And she's just a brilliant woman. And I love those women so much. I have such a deep respect for the women who've had the courage to do that U-turn. That wasn't something that I ever had to do myself, just simply because I wasn't on at any point the other side of this issue. But I always find it, I just have so much respect for the women who've had the guts to confront their own conscience in that way, because who among us can say whether we would have had the moral courage to stand up in public and say, I've been doing something very dreadful, in public for years. Nobody wants to have that conversation. But anyway, I wanted to tell her story very briefly, just to give you an idea of what it is that draws some women into this campaigning. The reality was that Sweat was the only organization in her neighborhood or anywhere around her that could offer her an exit out of prostitution. And in reality, it was, in its own way, an exit strategy. I mean, that's what she was doing, you know? When we talk a lot about exit strategies, and you mentioned them earlier, and where is the funding to support and help women get out? Well, that's exactly what we need for women, because women will take an exit any way they can find it, including standing up on a public platform and telling a pack of lies. And who could blame them when we know what their only alternative is?
Yeah, it is just so overwhelming, Rachel. All right, let me get back to, I'm very concerned about our girls, our teens, our young women, and how just in the last 5 years I have seen across the globe, obviously, this escalation of all this sex trade. I believe in the United States, people have become like habituated to it. No, it's like becoming such a normalized thing. Would you agree with that? What are your thoughts on that? Because at some point, look, let's be very realistic. We're not going to stop it, right? Which I tell myself every day. But what we can do is intervene and educate and have resources to help those, you know, uh, not get involved in it, and then help those that have come out of this horrendous sex trade. What do you think is going on? Because again, I'm a broken record, Rachel, but so many more girls and women in particular are getting involved in this. They have no other outlet. they come from a broken home, perhaps, or perhaps domestic violence. We work with a lot of survivors behind the scenes. It's just getting so big and it's so scary.
Mhm. Mhm.
What do you
Yeah.
think? Because it's really something that every single day bothers me that there's not more mainstream. There aren't more women. I'm like, where are all the women to like, I'm like Times Square. I'm not kidding, Rachel. Standing up, shouting with signs like, enough. We will not tolerate this abuse of our girls and women any longer. I don't see it.
Mhm. Mhm. I hear what you're saying. I think it's such a multifaceted question that I could be answering it for an hour. The first thing that strikes me is the way that, first of all, the language, the sex worker, sex work, that language, absolutely achieved what it set out to do, which was to normalize and to sanitize, as you say, and to mainstream. It's really done that. But media and social media and areas all across the internet have absolutely put a puddle of petrol onto this fire. What's happened is you've got the likes of OnlyFans, which I think is a perfect example of the blurring of the lines between the sex trade and real life, so that they almost meet in the middle. You know what I'm saying? It's like the sex trade has become so normalized and so mainstream that it's bled into ordinary everyday life in ways that people oftentimes don't even recognize. You know, um, I mean, I could tell you so many stories about this. I don't know where to begin, Lynn, because I see it all around me now in a way that I never saw it around me even when I was in the sex trade back in the 90s. So I was in the sex trade from 91 to 98, and I just was not living in a world then. Even while I was deeply entrenched in the sex trade and I was a stripper and I was, prostituting out of hotels and massage parlors and spent a couple of years on the streets and all of that. I wasn't immersed in it. You could step out of that, if you went to cafe for a cup of coffee or a bar for a beer, you could step out of that back into the real world. But now we're living in a world where you might go into a cafe or a bar and some guy is sitting there watching porn on his cell phone, and we're rapidly approaching an age where you'll be accused of prudery if you have something to say about it. you know I don't know. I mean, we're not quite there yet in Ireland where that would be considered socially acceptable, but it's certainly happening, you know so that's what I mean when I say these worlds are meeting in the middle rapidly. So, and it's a very frightening thing, especially for parents of girls. I'm a mother of boys, and you feel, and while of course boys are and can be and are abused and assaulted every day, there's a particular vulnerability with girls in that they are the subject, 99 times out of 100 of the violent, um, sadism, basically, that you see in porn. And this is why I'm glad, by the way, that the report that's just come out of the UN, Reem Alsalem's report, that she identified that very clearly. What we see in pornography as being indistinguishable from the brutality you see elsewhere in the sex trade.
Ugh, you open up such a can of worms. We need to speak constantly. There's so many issues here, Rachel. Also, I posted something today. It was out of Australia, a report about the strangulation that many young women, teens and young women are showing up. It was something like 13 to 19-year-olds, don't hold me to this, 31% of them, that is like their first experience with a boy strangulation. My concern is that it is so brutal. People, actually, somebody called me an extremist recently because I was talking about there's so much porn. It's not even the kids' faults with the algorithms and stuff. They could be looking at something Apple, it leads them into this path. We know, we have all the studies about algorithms, so that is the truth. It leads people down other paths, and a lot of it's porn. And young people, especially all people, are becoming so habituated to this porn. And if you're habituated, it becomes normalized. If it becomes normalized, you always want the next thing that's going to give you that kick. I don't know what it's called, that next, and it has become
Euphoric
so
rush. Yeah.
right. I might not be describing it. I mean, I'm not a doctor correctly, but it's so vicious and violent and
Mm.
brutal. And so we know these porn sites, we know the categories, 5-year-old girl in braids, like these horrendous different things. It's not just two people having sex. It has become brutal. We have reportings constantly. Men are buying girls and women. They're stabbing them. They're burning them. They're cutting their hair, beating them into unconsciousness. These men who are buying, this is here in New York. I don't know what it's going to take for everybody for it finally to really crash. Rachel, do you have any ideas? Or do we just keep plugging away at what we're doing? We put out the truths and facts. This is a wonderful report from Reem Alsalem. We keep talking about that. We keep showcasing her voice, your voice, keep giving out. I'd like some benefactor to come in, buy thousands of copies of your books and give that out so people can read, and understand what's going on. What do you think?
What I think is that people need to start putting their money where their mouth is, because we have got some very, very powerful people on the opposite side of the fence. There's about 3 or 4 multi-billionaires out there. Their names, most of them are much more obscure than our Mr. George Soros. He's the best known, but he's far from alone in his endeavors. And we need people on our side of the political fence, multi-billionaires who are prepared to say enough is enough and put their money where their mouth is. That's what we need, because there's a huge disparity, as we talked about earlier. What's so important here is that we turn this ship around, because another few generations on, like, we're creating the kind of world where no child can grow up in safely. I come from a very impoverished background, as you know, Lynn, but I had an interesting conversation with a woman I know a year or two back, where I was saying to her, what I really see now in the world is that, um, you know, financial means used to be a safety net, a real viable safety net for families and for parents. It's not anymore, because every child, no matter what their background is, has access to this technology. And, this is the way that predators are using this technology. And I don't only mean individual predators who are looking to get their hands on a child. I mean the predatory companies who are running all of this. I can't think of the word I want to use without swearing in this moment, to be honest with you, Lynn, because
Like big tech. You're talking about the big tech platform should have accountability. Those companies.
Absolutely, absolutely, because their behavior is predatory at an extreme level, and they're hurting children, every bit as much as a child molester. That's the way I perceive them. Like, there's a new book, and I cannot remember in this moment whether it's just been released or just about to be released, by Lila Micklethwait, about her fight against
Taking
porn.
down Pornhub. It's taking down
Yeah,
porn. Take it
yeah.
down or something like that. It's coming out. It's actually coming out like in a few weeks. Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to reading
Me
that.
too.
I haven't, and I think, I would encourage people to read these books and have these conversations. But also, if there happens to be anybody listening who has extraordinary means that they would like to direct into this fight, I would say, please do it, because this movement needs you more desperately. And, we're not, as I always say, we're not fighting for our own sakes, because what's happened to us cannot be undone. It's over. It's in our histories. We're fighting for the next generation and the one after that. And we need support most desperately.
I'm glad you said that because I'm going to say it again. There is a lot of money out there. I was giving a speech fairly recently and they said, "Oh, we can't do anything because, they have George Soros." I said, "Well, there's a lot of George Soroses we could bring in. We have to get to them, educate them, find them, and get the money." Because let's face it, the money, that's always what I hear. George Soros. I bet you, Rachel. No, not I bet you. We use George Soros, we know what he does, as a shorthand. There's a lot of George Soroses doing this kind of stuff. We never heard their names perhaps, but I maintain on the other side, if those truly understood, if we could get to them, they would step up, because everybody has mothers, sisters, daughters, whatever, and this can't go on. That's what I'm disappointed in, because
Yeah,
we are putting it out there. Reem
yeah.
Alsalem, how great is this that she's putting out? She spoke, she put out this report. It's brutal. Prostitution is violence at a very basic level. I'm kind of paraphrasing here. Uh, and I think we have to utilize this moment with this report and her great work, and the work you do, Rachel. Like, this is the moment, I feel like, now going
It
into
really is.
2025, where we have to switch it up. I feel like we're going to make bigger strides. I know on my end, we have a lot of law enforcement coming up in the next year. We're doing education, and they're putting in for more resources. So that's, every little nugget of positive information is good. And we have to like stay with that to give ourselves, energy to keep doing this. Now, let me ask you, what do you want the public to know, besides we need them to donate billions and billions of dollars to us so we can we can
Well, I don't,
counteract this? What do you want them to know? Because I'm always about the public. They have to
I don't
understand
ever
that.
want. Yeah, here's the thing, Lynn. I don't ever want anybody sitting at home listening to us thinking, well, I haven't got $10 to spare, or $20 is all I have to spare, to think to themselves, well, then I'm useless in this fight, because that is just not true.
Right.
Everybody has something to give and to bring. Education is a huge, huge key. Something that's happened over and over again since my book was released. And I never saw this coming, by the way, because it hadn't occurred to me at the point when I was writing it. Many, many teachers and professors have put it on their syllabus and made their class read this book. Kids from, like, 18, 19 on upwards. And that was huge for me. And I thought, oh my God, there's the education, that is spreading around now in universities and colleges and in various parts of the Western world and beyond. So, talking to people, like, it's not it's not always about the money. If you haven't got the money to give, you haven't got it. Give what you do have. Give your opinion, give your attention, give your time. You know, if you can donate your time, some amount of your time, to a shelter that cares for women. There's many, many ways to give to this fight,
Yes.
but I would say, in whatever way that you can give, get on the right side of this issue and stay on it, and bring whatever it is that you have to bring to this fight, because it's for us all, and it's about us all. It's about our world and everybody in it, and particularly the generations to come.
Um, Excellent. I could just talk to you all day, Rachel. There's so much. We have to talk more frequently.
We
And
should.
we really do, like, at least once a month, if your schedule allows, because we need to constantly remind everybody, update everybody, share information. And I want to point out, it's not, it is about money, but it's not always about money, because even, let's leverage the internet for good. If somebody out there, you share a report, you share, well vetted information, you share what Rachel is putting out on her X, you know, that is a way to help also. Getting the information out there, sharing this video, that is something, again, we want to just kind of light it on fire. This is it. There is no other way. And so I feel like, Rachel, I can't do my job. I've never been trafficked. I've been very fortunate enough, like, not on my watch. I'm so honored to speak with you. You're taking the time. Let us truly speak more frequently, because we have to just keep drilling down like harder on all these issues. You're truly like an inspiration to me. And I want to
Thank you so
thank
much,
you.
Lynn.
No, I want to thank you for all you have done, all you are doing. Again, we'll have all of your information in the body of this video. And send me that report you mentioned. You mentioned
I
something
will.
earlier. I don't think I have that. I don't think I saw that. I will put the link to your book. Again, mandatory reading. I'm happy to hear people, they're putting it, teachers, in their syllabus. That's where it belongs. Education. I want everybody, all you warriors out there, go to X at Rachel R. Moran also. And the book. Those are your two pieces. That's your homework, everybody. Rachel, please promise me we're going to speak again soon. Um,
We will
education
do. And free.
Education, intervention. And I just want to say from my heart, Thank you so much. You truly are a warrior. You empower me to want to do bigger and better and to help everybody out there. Thank you so much.
Thanks a million, Lynn. You take care.
You too. We'll talk again soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rachel.